The next thing we'll need to do is the tank loads, but we haven't defined our tanks yet. So let's go through and do some volume groups. Now, the volume groups we're going to create are, if we look at them in the document, we've got 1S, 2S, 3S. So these are all basically first compartment, starboard side, and then in the third compartment, we've got a high wing tank, an inside bottom tank, a low wing tank, and an outside bottom tank. And then as we move aft, we've got in each compartment inside bottom and an outside bottom. And what those are, as we look through this model, in the first two compartments, we only have the starboard tank. So it's this area here and this area here. When we get to compartment 3, this upper tank here is what we referred to as the 3S high wing tank. This is the 3S low wing tank. And then because we have a longitudinal floor 5 meters off center line here, hide that deck a little bit. This would be the 3 IB for inside bottom and 3 OB for outside bottom. And this would be 4 IB, 4 OB, 5 IB, 5 OB, and so forth. And we have 6 IB and OB, and I think a 7. And then there is one final tank all the way aft in compartment 8. That's right here. So let's go ahead and start creating these tanks. So we want to come in here into the groups dialog again, and these are going to be volume groups. So first thing we'll do is give it an ID, and our first one we're going to call 1S. Now, when you're creating volume groups, I think the easiest way to do this is with a box select. So I like to use the box, and I know my tank is in this area. So we click in the dialog, and I draw a good sized box that I know is going to encompass the entire tank, plus a little extra. And I'll go ahead and create that tank. When I come into the groups tree, we'll bring up volume group 1, which I'm going to change that to S. But I have all of this extra beyond my actual tank. But we can use the deletions dialog, and we can box select to remove some of this extra. And since we're deleting from a group, we're not actually deleting anything from the model. We're just removing items from the group. So we can go ahead and delete those. And I can leave a little extra on here. I could delete those manually if I wanted to. But one of the nice features of the volume group is you can right click, and there is an option here for peel internals. Now this was intended for removing extra pieces that are inside the tank because they're a little more difficult to select without disturbing the outer portions of the tank. So you can do peel internals. Now it's going to look for free edges inside the tank. So if you have a complete subdivision inside the tank, it's not, the peel internals is not going to fix it. If that was the case, what I like to do is you can shrink the elements to see inside the tank. And what I like to do is I'll open the deletions dialog, and I'll delete something on the outside of the tank so that I can see in, and I'll select an item on that bulkhead that's inside the tank to delete it. And then I'll come back out here and return this to the model to kind of patch that hole in the outside of the tank, and then go ahead and delete that one item from that internal. And now that I've broken that internal bulkhead, then you can use the peel internals to help get rid of it. So if I run peel internals, it also peels free edges from the outside. So it got rid of some of that extra stuff on the outside. And now I just have my tank boundary left. Now this is obviously a pretty simple tank, but that's kind of handy. And if I did accidentally either not select everything I needed or accidentally deleted too much, and I'll go ahead and delete an extra piece here so that now I have a hole in my tank. There's another command in here if we right click on that volume group where you can say fill holes. And if you have enough of the tank defined, it's not like you can just have two sides of the tank and say fill holes, it won't find the boundaries of the tank from that. But if you have the majority of the tank already defined, the fill holes command is pretty good about going into the model and searching to just fill small holes in the tank. It'll grab the appropriate pieces. Now, occasionally it may add some internals to the tank. So when you do that, you'll still need to shrink elements and check to see if there's anything inside. And if there is, then you can simply use the peel internals. Once the outside of the tank is complete, it won't affect those. But now we have that tank defined. Now the other thing we need to check on the tanks is where the pressure side is. So we'll come in here and we'll say the volume/plate pressure side of the tank. This happens sometimes whenever you're using the assign color properties. Because we did the assigned colors for the plates earlier and this was not part of it, they got kind of cleared. And let me see if we can fix that, maybe with renumber FE tags. This is a graphics issue with hoops. Easiest way to fix this is going to be save the model and reopen it. Say volume plate pressure side, we can see now the magenta is going to be the pressure side. So since it's a tank, we want the pressure on the inside of the tank, and most of it right now is on the outside. But we can use the consistent pressure side command when we right click on a volume group, and it tries to figure out which is the appropriate side. If it guessed wrong and the outside of the tank was magenta, there's another command for flip pressure side, so you can switch it back and forth. And if it's inconsistent and you're seeing patches of pressure on the inside, pressure on the outside, that's a good indicator that there's probably an internal piece in there as it's doing its search around the perimeter of the tank. It's finding some extra pieces and doubling back on itself, and things get flipped back and forth. The consistent pressure side doesn't work. You may have some extra pieces on your tank there. The thing I like to do is set the pressure sides and then do a quick check with the shrink elements, because having the two different colors makes it really easy to see whether or not there's any extra pieces on the inside. So there's our first tank. We want to come back in here and go ahead and continue building the others. For the second group, and this is again just a single tank. So for now we can go ahead and we'll go ahead and create a few more of these volume tanks. So for the second one, we'll call this one S2. Again, we'll use the box, create it, and I'm going to go ahead and create S3 high wing and grab that area. And we'll make S3 low wing. Area. And for S3 IB and OB, to create one, and actually it's been SV IB, so we'll create another actually volume 2 should be S2, and this would have been volume 3, 4, 5, and volume 6, probably the last one that I just created, the S3-OB, manually created one. So if we view this one, now I didn't delete any of the extra stuff in here. Let's see how good a job peel internals does on all that extra. Well, it peeled everything away from the tank, but we got left with some extra pieces. If we peel internals again, I don't think it will have any effect because it looks at the closed volume, it deletes things around the perimeter, but those extra pieces are too far away. So we'll just have to manually delete them. Now we could just grab one from each thing and do add by seed, since they're not connected to the tank anymore, we don't have to worry about deleting part of the tank. And if we do a quick check, there's no internals. We can look at the pressure side, make it consistent, and it all looks good. And move on to the next one. And we'll try to peel internals. We have a clean border there. Now, one problem is the coloring on those is hollow because of that graphics issue. If I try and select, oh, it did select it even though it was hollow. And then we can use consistent pressure side. So it's really not too bad building the tanks here. Now that one, when I did peel internals, it did break a lot of these pieces away from the tank boundary, but not all of them. So if I were to click on these and say add by seed, it would delete the top and bottom of the tank here. So if we try and peel internals again, it's still not breaking the connection there. So we'll have to manually delete those. So if we come in and actually I could use the add by seed advanced, and we can give it, we can use everything, the full X, Y, and Z, and we'll go from one corner to the other. Oops. This I've seen happen before. This module elements found in the deletion list, unusual, please see the deletion list. So it didn't delete anything, and I'm not sure what exactly a module element is there. Worst case, we can manually select these elements and make a break. And actually, this is where the box select is kind of convenient. Now, sometimes when you do a box select, it just will not select certain elements when you do a box select. There's usually one that's left over, and you just have to switch over to just a regular selection, and then it'll grab it. And now that we only have a little bit left on here, we can see if peel internals will work, and it does. So once you get rid of the significant portion of the attached pieces, the peel internals will go ahead and get rid of the rest when it's just a little bit on the tank. And we check the pressure side, make it consistent. Now that time when we did consistent pressure side, it guessed wrong. It got the pressure on the outside, so we've got to flip it. But now we're fine. And if we check the internals, we can see there's nothing inside. So peel internals didn't work very well on that one. But we can, switch around to a better view where we can grab a lot of these extra elements here. And once we're closer to just the actual tank, then we might be able to use peel internals. And that finally worked. So we can grab this add by seed and delete. So we'd have to keep working through here to define the rest of our tanks. If we look at the pressure side on that one, have to make it consistent.